Good afternoon. My name is Eva Fiallos Diaz, and I'm the Rural Project Coordinator with the Florida Council Against Sexual Violence. Today is the second of our rural presentations on serving adolescents in rural communities. The first focused primarily on the process that children undergo, specifically at a Children's Advocacy Center, which is also known as a CAC. And today will be geared more toward direct service. Um, Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about our presenter, the amazing Pamela Hope. Um, she is an MSW from Putnam County's Sexual and Domestic Violence Intervention and Prevention Program, and she has graciously agreed to lead today's Rural Partners call via GoToWebinar. So she is going beyond the call of duty as she does on an everyday basis. Pamela is a registered clinical social worker and has completed doctoral coursework for marriage and family therapy. She works tirelessly as an advocate for rural Florida survivors and has a certification in play therapy that allows her to provide specialized therapy services focused on helping child survivors of sexual abuse recover from trauma. So I'm glad that you're here to join us for this amazing presentation. And I think before we get started, we want to know a little bit more about you. Do we want to know a little bit more about them before they get started, Pam?
Sure. I think there's a poll there. If you could start the poll, that would be great.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to be launching a poll. And so please tell us if your agency currently provides master's level therapy services, yes or no. And that can be individual as well as group therapy. Okay. About 47% of folks have voted so far. Okay, we have about 60% of folks who have voted. And I don't see, let's see, there are a few still voting, so. Okay. It looks like I'm getting some feedback there. Sorry about that. We're having. If you have another presentation open next to yours, it might react to the other one. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. So we have, Pam, the final result is that 67% of folks say that yes. There's still some folks who are voting. 69% say yes. So the majority of folks do have master's level therapy services offered at their agency. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're getting a lot of feedback from the line.
Is it from my line or?
I think it might be from your line. Let me check to see if anybody else is signed in without muting. If you haven't muted yourself, please do. I think I see everybody is muted. If you do have a computer with the webinar open next to your own computer, that might be reacting. I don't hear it anymore, so I think that did it. All right, there we go. Oh, there it is again. I'm going to, let's see. I see you on two different, so you're, let me see if I can just, I'm going to mute your computer audio because you're on both right now. There we go. That should hopefully do it. Can you still hear me, Pam? Oh, that is not doing it. Okay. How about that? Pam?
I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, and the noise has gone away. So I I ended up having to mute one of the two ones that you were on. And I think it's
Okay.
the phone one that I muted, and I can hear you just fine through the computer one. So we're sorry about that. Sometimes we have these technical difficulties at the beginnings of our webinars. So thank you for bearing with us. All right, so the majority of folks do have master's level therapy offered at their centers.
Great. So when I put this presentation together, I was very, very excited. When I first started working with survivors, I worked primarily with adults, and a lot of adults came in and they said when I was a kid, and they had a lot of unresolved trauma and conflict. They've made a lot of decisions in their life based on what they knew as a child, some of which they had worked through on their own, some they had worked through with therapy services, and some of them had never had the opportunity to work through their abuse, and they'd carried it with them their entire lives. So I didn't start out wishing to work with children. I thought children were messy and complicated, and I didn't choose to do that initially. But when I saw the folks that were carrying a lot of abuse and trauma with them for years and years, I decided that to work with children would give a lot of survivors the opportunity to live a comfortable life, a life free from the turmoil, the emotional turmoil that they had experienced for many, many years. So I didn't go into it thinking, oh boy, this is going to be fun and easy. I went in thinking this is going to be complicated and hard. And what can I do best to help these young folks to live and be free from the feelings of abuse? When I put the PowerPoint slides together, I thought of the questions that I might have or that I've had in the past about how to serve children and adolescents. If there are questions that you have regarding any slide in particular, Eva's going to filter the questions for me, and she'll read them off as we go along so that we can answer them for you.
Yep.
So when I first started working here, we saw survivors age 12 and up, and we slowly began to lower the age limit of children that were coming through the door, and it was a slow progression at first, and we started to build our referral sources. The referral sources that you see on your screen: the Child Protection Team, Department of Children and Families, Community Partnership for Children, the police departments and sheriff's office, the state attorney's office, physicians' offices, schools, and outreach events are some of the many places that we get our intakes from. Word of mouth has worked really well. People start to hear about your program. They say, you know, there's a need for this in this county. How can I best serve these people? And then the referrals really start to come in, and we get a lot of referrals for children. Sometimes, and we're a small county, sometimes 10 and 12, 15 children referrals a week. There is a large gap in services in a rural area. We've responded to the needs in the community to provide these services to children. There aren't a lot of other options for children. So we do get a lot of referrals because otherwise they're being sent to locations very far away, and a lot of folks don't have transportation. So we wanted to make sure that we could provide these services to children. We wanted to make sure that the services we provided were trauma focused, where children could work through these issues of abuse, that they could sleep at night, they could feel safe at night, they could know how to protect themselves. They were very basic components that we started with when we first started working with children of younger and younger ages. When we were getting started working with the younger group, and we work now from 5 with children 5 to 18. We also work with many adults. Primarily, I work with children. It's about 90% of what I do. So the importance of a thorough intake is really important. I like to make sure that regardless of who's doing the intake, we know what are their trauma symptoms. Are they having flashbacks? Are they having nightmares? Are they having behavior problems in the schools? Are they acting out? Do they look like they have ADHD? ADHD and PTSD look very similar in children. Are they hyperactive? Are they having a hard time focusing? That helps me to try to make a treatment plan that's going to work for each person. We want to look at the client population. What age ranges are we working with? What are their specific issues that the clients would like to address? And just as when we're working with adults, when we're working with children, we want to make sure that they have control over the things that they think are important to them. We want to make sure that we have considered the staff. We have flexible hours in our program. We're very blessed that the administration here is very supportive of us, that they allow us to do the work that we need to do, and they are flexible with our time and our schedules so that we can serve children without removing them from school, without having to, not see clients because we need to flex times or hours with the staff. The other staffing consideration when we're working with groups, we want to make sure that we have enough folks available so that their safety and their well-being are taken care of, and there's enough staff per children to see that their needs are met. Go ahead.
We have one question that has come in, and it's about how the physician's offices responded. How have they responded?
So I'll just give you a recent example. We have a therapist in town that works out of a physician's office. She does general mental health. She's heard a lot about our program from other clients who have come to see her, from folks in the community, and she was contacted by another physician that said, I have this person I need to send in. This is the kind of services they need. Who would you recommend? And she recommended our program. She wanted trauma-focused therapy specifically for sexual assault, and they were requesting that kind of a referral source. So immediately we told the physician about our program. We took brochures out to his office. We educated his staff on the services that we offer, and we offer to fill one of their what do you call those? Put our brochures inside of his office in an area where clients could reach them. And that's how the referral sources grow. One person hears about your services, they recommend you to someone else. And when people call, we immediately take that as an outreach opportunity to go out and educate folks on the services available. The CPT medical staff is also a great referral source for our children. Our CPT is done, the interviews are done locally. The medical is done in Jacksonville, and they're very good at making the referrals to this area. Does that answer the question?
Yes, you said thank you, that was a very helpful explanation.
Okay. When we think about space, we want to make sure that we have the space that is necessary for whatever age range and group size that we're working with. The children need space to move around. They don't always just want to sit and talk like adults will. So in this particular location, I have a very large office. I have an office that probably used to have 4 desks in it. So I have put my desk in one corner, and the entire rest of my office is filled with children's items, sandboxes, doll houses, shelves full of everything that you can imagine, Legos and Play-Doh and paint. I have big, large cabinets full of items that children can manipulate and adolescents. It is very rare to find someone who just wants, a child or an adolescent that just wants to look at you. They want something to do with their hands. They want something else to focus on, because talking about what happened is sometimes extremely difficult. We use the conference room when we have a large group. We have a very large conference room, and we use that space when we have a larger group of children so that they also have room to move. So spacing is really important. There's a lot of areas, if you don't have space in your particular building, contact your local health department and ask if you could use their space. Sometimes people are really willing to help out and be a part of something that the community really finds a great need in. And materials, I'm going to get to that at the end. We work on a budget, or a really small budget, and we have become very creative at how we can provide really awesome activities for kids on very little money, and we're really proud of that. So I'm going to move forward. So when we're doing that intake, we want to see how ready they are for treatment. I think 10 and under, they're a pretty easygoing group. I think 15 and up, they're not too bad either. They're here because they truly want to be here. That between 10 and 14 or 15, they're a little iffy. They may not be ready to come in and sit down and disclose the sexual assault, the abuses that they've incurred. They have a lot of issues with, or I have found, with trust. A long time ago, I had an adult survivor explain it to me that when she was young and a teenager, and she went to talk with someone, that she had just grown out of having someone help her with her bath. She had just realized that she had a body that belonged to herself, and suddenly she was sitting in front of a grown-up who wanted to know all the specific details about her abuse. She found it intimidating. She found it invasive. She found it that she wanted to protect her own privacy, and she felt like she could never disclose to that person because it made her feel very uncomfortable. And over the years, I've taken a lot of notes from people who have said, this is my experience and this is what I didn't like. I explain confidentiality to children in their own language in a way that they can feel safe, so that they understand that they too hold confidentiality, that if they tell me something like mom's macaroni and cheese is really awful, I'm not telling mom that. They need to feel like what they talk about is as private as you or I would want something private. We want to look at some of their insights. Some children have excellent insight. They're able to put 2 and 2 together. They can draw a line and they can say, yes, I do this because of that. And some of them really struggle with insight, and it takes a lot more explanation. I use a lot of examples that have nothing to do with they've experienced. If I have to, I will make up an example. I will say, well, let's say, I was driving down the road, and we'll talk about trauma in a way that makes more sense to them. So I'm really big on examples that have nothing to do with their abuse. I don't want to act like I know what they've been through until they explain it to me. I want to make sure that I understand their way of life from their own view, and then I want to see how able they are to make insights into their own life. If they're having difficulty making those connections, I'll be real creative and find a way. Sometimes it's through a drawing to make the connection between what they feel, what they experienced, and what normal, healthy life should look like. So all of these tips that I'm giving you are sometimes things that I have done that didn't work out well. For instance, I never talked to parents after a session with a child. One time, many years ago, I had a really great mom who said, "Can I ask you a quick question?" A quick question turned into a 45-minute discussion. The child felt like I was disclosing everything that we had just discussed. The child never wanted to come back again. When children are done in this room working on trauma, they want to go home. They want to go do something healthy, productive, safe. They want to de-stress. They want to be normal again. They don't want to sit in the waiting room waiting for a mom to ask a quick question. So I will tell parents, I will never speak to you after it's over. If you have a question, you can always call me. You can call one of our other staff members. If you would like some insight on things that you can do for your children that would be helpful, I'd be happy to have you come in every 2 or 3 weeks, preferably 3. And we'll talk about what it is that you can do to be helpful to your child. But we're not going to talk about what your child said. It's up to the child to disclose to their parent and to disclose to other people in their lives. It's not up for us to be the police officers in the state attorney's office. Our job is the healing job. Our job is to transition them from something that was awful and abusive to a life that is happy and normal and carefree. They want to be children again. They want to be adolescents. They want to know what normal looks like. We want to look at the negative and positive cognitions. What is that message in their head? Is it, I'm not good enough? Is it, I'm not smart enough? Is it, I'm stupid? Is it, it's all my fault? Or I should never have told because now my family isn't together. There are some cognition cards. I believe they're in the handouts. They are amazing cards, and sometimes I will take those cards out and I will put them down and I will say, pick the 3 that apply to you the most. And they have positive and negative cognitions. The adolescent doesn't have to talk. They just flip through the cards. And each card says either negative, either I am stupid, I am really smart. They have the opposite cognitions on them. And they will pick the 3 that apply to them, and they'll slide them back across. It gives you great insight, and they don't have to talk directly to you about it. They can just push it across the table. And the interpretation of the abuse. A lot of kids come in and they say, it's all my fault. I should have said no. And they're 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 14, and they think somehow they were responsible for allowing this to happen in their life. And so they have to work through, this is not my fault. I did not do this. This is something that someone else has done. And I have a circle drawing that I make that I'd be happy to send out later about how it is that we want to take responsibility for something. And the more we take responsibility for something that someone else did, the less the person who made this bad judgment takes responsibility for it. And children really understand that, and they look at that and they say, I get it, I'm not going to blame myself anymore. Are there any questions?
So far, no other questions have come in. But I'm loving all of the real life examples that you're providing, and that's a wonderful way. Like the circle exercise, I can kind of see that also being just a great boundary exercise.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example real quick of that. So if you draw a big circle in the middle of your paper, and what I always use the story of if my house got robbed. So I draw a circle in the middle of the paper and I say, if my house got robbed, who did that? And the children always say, well, the robber did. So I write robber in the middle of the paper. And then I draw another circle that sort of intersects that circle, and I say, so I forgot to leave my door unlocked this morning, and I'm going to blame myself. Is it my fault that I left the door unlocked? Did the robber have a right to steal my belongings because I left my door unlocked? Well, no. But I've just taken half the blame for something that someone else did wrong. Then I draw another circle that intersects, and I say, my husband was going to buy an alarm system for the house, but he forgot. Is it his fault that the robber robbed my house? And they say, well, no, you don't have to have an alarm system. And I say, well, now the robber takes less blame. And then they look at me, and those with really great insight will say, I get it. It's not my fault. I've had parents look at that and say, I'm never blaming myself again. I didn't do this. And it's really easy for people to say somehow, especially when they're 11, 12, 13, 14, that adolescent group, somehow this is my fault. Somehow I allowed this. And we want to make sure that the blame stays with the perpetrator and not with the survivors and the secondary survivors. And so I do a lot of visual drawings to give examples, and I give a lot of examples that has nothing to do with abuse because it seems to be easier for folks to make the connection between my house getting robbed and, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. When we look at client populations, we look at where is the client in the process. Do they need a basic education group? Do they need some individual work to shore themselves up before they could go to group? What are their present issues and concerns? For some adolescents, they will say, I don't want to talk about the sexual assault, but I do want to talk about bullying. Because I feel like every time I get bullied, it reminds me of the sexual assault, and I get bullied at school a lot. So that's their present issue and concern. That's directly correlated to the sexual assault, but that's what they want to work on now. So we start where they are. It's like any other adult client. We're going to start where they are. We're going to ask them the questions of the things that are important to them. Sometimes they'll say, well, my siblings are all mad at me because we've been removed from mom, and now they're all blaming me for it. And nobody wants to talk to me, and so we work on that. We want to provide them with those avenues that are important to them. With adolescent survivors, or all survivors, it's important to see that there's a big difference between I let him do this and I wasn't able to stop it. We want to make sure that we look at the personalities of individuals. Some of the young folks that I work with, they're very quiet, they're very shy. They need a lot of manipulations. They need a lot of Play-Doh and sand, and kids like to paint. Everybody likes to paint. There isn't a child that I've had come in here, male or female, and I say, would you like to paint today, that says, no, thank you. Although I do have one 5-year-old that only likes to sandbox. They all like to paint, and choosing something for them to paint that's important to them is important. Would you like to paint a max today? Yes, I'd like to do that. Would you like to paint a picture? Would you like to just paint out your anger? What would you like to do? What is their personality? I have some adolescents that come in here and they just want to sit down and talk it all out. They don't need anything in front of them. They're just going to tell you exactly what happened and how it was. And, of course, that makes things a lot easier. But they all need something to do. I have a lot of little squeeze balls. And sometimes we play catch. We just throw it back and forth. I have a great game I play with young man. I take a laundry basket that you can fold down flat. And when you unfold it, it springs open, and I have tennis balls. We sit on one side of the room. We put the basket on the other. Fortunately, I played basketball with my brother when I was young. So we just throw balls into the net, and whoever gets one in gets to ask the other person a question. We have to answer the question honestly, and they come up with some really interesting questions, like, are you married? And I start out really with easy questions. If they ask me my favorite color, when I get one in, I say, what is your favorite color? You start where they are, and you make it really simple. Sometimes you play that game a couple of times before they even begin to say, let me tell you what happened to me. And that's okay. And I'll tell you a funny story about the basketball. I used to turn it around the other way, and I have a person who's on the other side of the wall, and he wanted to know what I was doing with all these balls banging on the wall of his office next door, so I had to turn the basket and face it in the opposite direction. So you learn a lot as you go along.
So, Pam, you've got a lot of love coming in on the chat, just folks sharing that they really like the policy of you not talking to the parents after a session. And they're also just like blown away by a lot of all the examples that you're providing for activities, the ideas. So I guess keep that up. And I wanted to say that, I mean, Pam is also very clearly illustrating empowerment, right? So the idea of choice. When you provide folks with choices, you're again giving them control, which is what was primarily taken from them. And it also stems from the model of crisis intervention where, right, yes, the relationship building is going to be crucial, but then you're also working on identifying what the issue is. And sometimes that issue may not seem like it's the sexual assault itself, because trauma is self-defined. So thanks, Pam. You're doing awesome.
Thank you. So you were talking about examples. I'm going to give another example. So imagine any of us talking about a trauma in our life, whether it's a sexual assault or domestic violence or even how my morning was, and someone's looking at you with their eyebrows furrowed and saying, really? Yeah. And then, do you want to tell more? Do you want to, maybe I'll just kind of shut down after that because they don't get it. So a lot of times it's talking to them where they are, using examples. Sometimes I make up a lot of stories. I have this pool noodle, and the pool noodle is the best angry stick I have ever used in my life. I have a 7-year-old who can slap that pool noodle on the ground and say, it makes me angry when. But sometimes, if you ask them, tell me what makes you angry, and slap this pool noodle, they look at you like you've lost your mind. So sometimes it starts with our staff and our people slamming it on the ground and saying, it really makes me angry when people cut in front of me. And you use something simple that everyone can understand. And then the next person grabs the pool noodle and says, it really makes me angry when, I don't get recognized for what I do. And then the children start taking the pool noodle and slapping it on the ground and becomes more personal. It really makes me angry when my uncle touched me. It really makes me angry when, and they get it out of their system. And sometimes we have spent a whole group slapping pool noodles. And when they walked out, they were laughing, they were happy. We go down the hallway when we're done with a group, and it says, I am, and somebody shouts out a word, I am independent, I am outstanding. We use a lot of tools that only cost just a few dollars. The dollar store is my favorite place in the whole world, and it's where I get my best ideas. I walk through and I look at items and I think, how can I use this to prove a point? And sometimes I bring all the materials in and I've got this great idea and the kids take over and they say, no, we want to do this. And they make their own projects and they have their own way of doing things. There is a teacher's section at the dollar store. I have there are some kids who need to take something home with them. It is the only way that they know love is that I have something that you gave me. So I have a treasure box, and I fill it with dollar store items. And sometimes it's just items that you know they need, like there's those washcloths that you can buy that they start out really tiny, and when you put water on them, it blows up into a washcloth. And so sometimes, they are items that they could actually use at home that they may not have available to them. There are great behavioral management things to teach better parenting that we use. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next screen because I don't want to run out of time. Where am I in time? Eva?
So it's 2:36 and we have till 3. So you have a little under half an hour, and then we've also allowed 15 minutes for questions or just in case we go a little over.
Okay, let me make sure. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly through staffing considerations. I want you to consider individual versus group, the training that people get to feel comfortable with working with adolescents and children. There are a lot of great trainings out there. Sometimes you have to search. There was a training, and I can send it to you. It's in Jacksonville. I think it's in a couple of days. It's a sand tray training. You don't have to be a therapist to go, but you can learn a lot of really great ideas. I think it's a 2-hour training. Bring your lunch, and it's like $20. And they will give you some basic ideas about working with sand tray. So a lot of times you have to look a little bit, but they are out there. There's a lot of really great trainings on how to do things to work with children. Scheduling the staff, I talked a little bit about that already. Fortunately, we have a very supportive administrative staff here who's very supportive of what we do. We do work a lot of evenings. The school district here changed the time that children get out, not this year, not last year, but it was last year. So children don't even get out of school till 3:30, 4 o'clock. But, we're really flexible about that. We're going to meet them where they are. All right, I'm going to move around for our big, large conference room where we have groups. The restroom is around the corner. So when we're looking at space, where are the restrooms? Do you need extra staff to play hall monitor while the children are walking back and forth to the restrooms? Do they have enough room for movement? We had one particular group where kids just wanted to be kids, and that was their topic. We have a basic education, but the kids said, why can't we ever have a class on just being normal? And I thought, wow, what a great idea. We all want to be normal. Let's have a class on being normal. So we got out hula hoops. We brought the big dollhouse over. We had a painting station. We had some stamping mats, which are a really great tool for kids. They're foam, and they can draw on them, color on them, chalk on them. They use them to stomp out their anger. We had a resting station. We had borrowed a mat from WIC, and it was very colorful. And if they just wanted to sit and read a book or talk to a friend, they could do that. It was an amazing session where they had control over what they used, what they played with, and we had a lot of room to do it, and we needed it. We have a lot of big pillows to sit on. In my office, I probably have, and I'm turning around and looking, probably 10 or 15 pillows so that they can sit on the floor and feel comfortable. They can sit on the floor and play in the dollhouse. They can sit and just feel like they're themselves. Sometimes they don't want to sit in an adult chair. They just want to hang out. They just want to sit and cross their legs and talk about what really happened. So in our big conference room, we have these rolling chairs, and we figured out really easily that we don't like rolling chairs. Just kind of warning you in advance, because they get in the rolling chair and they slide all over the room, and it becomes really chaotic and dangerous. So we have to take the rolling chairs out of the room. It's a conference room, so when we're using it for group, we do remove our rolling chairs. And you learn those things as you go along. What worked, what didn't work. The staff is really good at looking at, here's what worked for me, here's what didn't work, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. We encourage a parent session when the kids are having their session. We use a family systems approach for individual group. You have to have more staff available if you're going to have a caregiver group and a children's group at the same time. But there's a lot of caregivers, when they're put together and they have a similar experience, they will help each other, they will talk with each other, they will learn good coping skills. They will also feel like, okay, here's the things that I need to work on. Here's what I need to do differently. Here's what I can do better. And we do the same thing for individual. When we're working with children, a lot of parents come in and they say, this is so hard for me because I'm a survivor too. This is real hard for me because now I'm all alone. This is real hard for me because the family won't talk to me anymore. This is real hard for me because I don't want to hear about the abuse. And so we work in conjunction with the child appointments at 3, the parents appointments at 3, and we team up a lot. We need to do a lot of basic parenting skills. And so that works out really well. So we've got some materials for working on a budget. Butcher block paper is the most amazing paper I've ever seen in my life. It is really hard to carry. It is amazing. Kids love butcher block paper. We had one group where all the kids laid down, and we traced a very basic outline, not touching their bodies, and they drew themselves on this paper, and they put their clothes on they drew their clothes on, their hair, their faces. They had a blast. And when they were done, I had this creepy hand that I'd cut out, and I asked them where it would be okay for someone to put their hand. Some of them put the hand on their head, on the paper head. Some of them put it on their arm, some of them put it on their knee, and some of them threw the hand in the trash. So it was a really great way to talk about body safety, using their own body, and reinforcing that nobody touches me under my bathing suit. Nobody can touch me in any place that I find inappropriate or that I don't like. Even if that means someone putting their hand on your knee and patting your knee, if you don't like that, it's okay to take that creepy hand and throw it in the trash. And they really learned a lot about that. I am in charge of my body, even if I'm 10 or 11 or 12. The face masks are super popular. Sometimes we draw the face that we want to be. Sometimes we draw the face that we are right now. Sometimes we divide the face mask in half. I have probably 75 masks, and they are super amazing. I used to hang them all over my office, but then when I would ask a child or an adolescent to paint something, they would copy something they saw. So I have since kind of hidden them, and I take them out later. It's also a great tool when you have that brand new adolescent that doesn't want to talk. I don't want to talk. You'd never get it. You don't understand. You don't know what my life is like. I pull out my box of masks, and I don't have to talk about the person's story that owns the mask. What I say is, what do you think this adolescent felt? And then their eyes get a little bigger, and then I say, or this one, or maybe this one. And then they say, I know exactly what they were thinking. And then they tell their own story. They were thinking that they're just a piece of garbage and nobody has any use for them and they're just stupid. And they start to interpret someone else's mask in their own words, in their own story. and it's a great conversation story. Empty containers, pretzel containers, we use them for drums. We use them for making pop bottle explosions, to talk about anger. We use them for taking turns. We have made positive cognition containers. Okay, so Joanne just brought me one. So, right, we can make a music line. We can make a song. We can do some rap music, and they make up the words. I wanted to make a negative container. This was in a group. I wanted to make a negative container so that when children had negative feelings, they could write it on a piece of paper and stick it in their container, and they decorated the container. And the kids looked at me and said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to make a positive container. So when I'm at home and someone's yelling at me, I can pull out something that says, you're beautiful, don't worry about it. So my idea went out the window, and their idea went right into the container, and it was amazing because they'll tell you what they want to do. The chalk. The what? Oh, the containers are free because Joanne likes to eat pretzels. The chalk, we did chalk art outside. It was really nice. It was the fall, and we talked about being survivors and being free and all of these things. It was at the end of our 6-week group session, and the kids went outside with chalk, and they decorated the entire front of the health department with all of their great words of encouragement and all of their wonderful experiences, and it stayed there until it rained. It was probably a month. It was amazing. They like colored pencils better than crayons. I'm not sure why. Paint. There's conversation starter blocks. You can actually buy a ball. Joanne found one at the dollar store where you can write in your own ideas of conversation starters, and then you use a dry erase marker, and then you can wipe it off, and the next child that comes in, you can make up questions for them or ideas or thoughts. It's one of those thumb balls, but you get to make the words. Let's see. So some of the themes that we talk about, individual or in group: safety, internet, and personal. We have an advocate who's excellent at internet safety. She knows more than I'll ever know. She has a class that she teaches both individual and in group about internet safety, how to be safe, what to do, what things are available on the internet, what you should stay away from. We talk about relationships, especially with the teenagers. What does a healthy relationship look like? Sometimes they just don't know. They don't know what healthy looks like because they've never seen it in their home and they've never experienced it in their life. So how do you help someone to have a healthy relationship if they never know what it is? How do you know what an orange tastes like if you've never had one? Right? Describe tasting an orange. Yeah, kind of hard to do, right? Talk about anger, guilt and shame, self-esteem. I do a lot of self-esteem building. With everyone that comes through the door, there is always something amazing about everybody, every day. Wow, I really like the way you put that outfit together. It is so cool. It is really neat. I love your shoes. I think your hair, you have to be genuine. But when you look at people, there is always something genuinely really great about that person. And sometimes it's the only compliment they ever hear that day. And they're like, wow, Miss Pam's so nice to me because she always notices like my pretty necklace. Or she always makes a comment about, my pretty shoes. I really feel good when I go there because she's excited that I'm there. She comes out of her room and she's smiling and she's like, oh my gosh, get down here. Right? Someone who is genuinely interested in having me be a part of their life. We look at common reactions, coping skills. A lot of kids need a lot of coping skills. What do you do when you're angry? It's a really great question. It's a really great question for parents. I look at parents sometimes and I say, what do you do when you're angry? And then they look at me and they blush and they say, well, and I say, well, what do you want your child to do? right? Well, I don't want them to be angry. Well, good luck with that. We all get angry. What can we do with that? Where can we go with that? Do you have a pool noodle? Because pool noodles are great. Yeah, kids are brutally honest, so be prepared for that. They will tell you exactly how they see it. One 12-year-old told Joanne once that her hair was boring, and she had to agree with it. So they will tell you exactly what they think. If they don't like what you're doing, or they don't think you're being real, or they don't want to play with you that day, they'll say, I don't want to talk to you today. And I'll say, well, all right, what would you like to do? Well, I just want to sit here and be quiet for a few minutes. All right, let's do that. And then you can talk about, it's a really great idea. Sometimes meditation is really great. Let's just think about a happy place. Think about the most beautiful place in the world. And picture that. Right? Common reactions. You are not alone. And I think that's one of the benefits of being in my office and seeing all the artwork there is everywhere, is that they walk in and they realize, oh, I'm not alone in this. Look at all of the artwork. Look at all of the drawings and the pictures that they drew with their bathing suits on, and really interesting artwork that people do to say, this is what I feel. Okay, we're going to move along. So some of the activities are always client-based. Some of us are really good at thinking on our feet. Some of us need a lot of planning. Know who you are. I'm one of those people that can think right on the top of my feet. What am I going to do with this child today? This child is working on bullying. What can I do with bullying? Let me think about it for a few minutes, and then I come up with a great activity. Some people need a lot more preparation. So in this program, we're developing a book, and we're putting different things under different categories. So if someone needs something spur of the moment because they're going to go teach a class, or they've got a client coming in, they can open up the book on anger or bullying, and they can pull out something that's really useful and really creative that doesn't take a lot of supplies. As soon as we get that book together, we're going to send it out and let you all have some pages and some, so that we can all have great ideas. All of you have really great ideas too. We sat together, the three of us, about a week ago to think about ideas of things that we could do, and I think we came up with 9 or 10 in 20 minutes. So when people have great ideas, if you send them in and we can all share those ideas, I think that's amazing, because we all have the tools that we have, but together we're like super great. When we're working on groups, we want to look at social skills. You might not want to put, a shy person with 3 really talkative people, but putting 3 shy kids together would work really well. And when I tell you these things, I've done all the wrong things twice, and then I did it right forever. So, sometimes you've got to look at where they are in life. One time I had someone in a group and someone else who was a little bit of a bully, and it really hurt the other person's feelings. So I had to really rethink how much shoring up do children need before they go to group. And, if you do something and it doesn't work, don't give up. Just keep going. Just keep running with it. Kids will know you're human too. I'm really sorry I did that, and let's do this the next time. Kids like it when you're honest. Kids like it when you're real. Bubbles are amazing for a coping skill. Blowing bubbles, we can't go outside per se here, but we can blow them in my office. And if you don't blow the bubble the right way, you don't get a bubble. If you blow it too hard, it breaks. If you don't blow fast enough, it doesn't blow. So it's a really great skill to teach breathing, and they like it. I want to make sure I talk about the tree drawings, because I think those are amazing. If you have a teenager, a 12-year-old, and they don't really want to talk, you give them this assignment. You say, I want you to draw yourself as a tree. You are a 12-year-old tree. You can be any kind of tree you want. You can have anything else in the picture you want, but you, the 12-year-old tree, has to be in the picture. And then they look at you, and I say, well, go ahead. And they get out colored pencils because they all hate crayons. And they start drawing. And while they're drawing, you pick something that you think is really important for them to know, like guilt and shame or body safety or something that they have told you is important, bullying, and you just start talking about, the other day, boy, I was in line at the store, and this woman, boy, she thought she was the boss of the whole store. Man, she was pushing everybody around, and I had to stand my ground, and boy, that was hard to do. And then they look at you and they keep drawing. They hear your message. They hear that it's hard for everybody to be bullied. They hear the message of, I have to be a strong person. They hear the message of, sometimes life is just not right, and I have to know who I am as a person. And they continue to draw their tree. And when they're done with their tree, you let them interpret the tree. Well, tell me about your tree. What's missing in the tree? What does the sunshine stand for? What does the grass mean to you? So I always look at the sun as happy, right? Kid puts a happy sunshine in a tree drawing, it must mean they're really happy. So I asked them, I said, what does the sun mean to you? And they said, the sun is the perpetrator burning the life out of me. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful. Tell me about that. What is that like? How can you snuff that sun out? What can you do to bring some rain in to cool down the tree? Who is the rain in your life? Yeah, don't always assume. Ask the question. Wow, and when kids draw a picture of a tree and it has a hole in the middle of it, it usually means they're very nurturing, because squirrels and birds and things live inside the hole of a tree. And most children will tell me that. One child said, it's a hole in my heart. I feel empty inside. Tell me about that. What parts, what's the empty part? What's it look like? Well, it looks like nobody will talk to me anymore. Wow. One of the things that kids always tell me they want to hear is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened to you. Right? Role playing with kids, right? How to be more assertive, how to have better boundaries. What would you say to? And you pick that person in their life that they really want to know something. Sometimes it's the perpetrator. What would you say to the perpetrator if the perpetrator was sitting here right now? Sometimes it's your mom. What do you want your mom to know? I worked with one family where they were a little afraid to talk to mom, so they wrote it down on a piece of paper. And they were able to push that piece of paper across the table to the mom, who actually was really supportive and really great and had really super good answers. The mom had worked her own things out with another staff member, and it was a great family moment. Any questions?
So far, it's just been comments. A couple of the advocates are really excited about the book that you're putting together, and I think some of them have mentioned
that they don't feel like creative people, so that would be really helpful to them. And I'm thinking about it in terms of just how awesome it'd be to have that as a resource for other advocates, as they're coming into this work or as they're continuing and trying to kind of reinvigorate. So I think that's an amazing idea that we can kind of collaborate on.
Great, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think people are more creative sometimes than they know.
Absolutely.
I have got the best ideas from staff members, from kids, from people out in the community to say, you know what I do? And it comes out to be a really great experience. When people get together, it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
Where am I on time?
So it is 3 o'clock now.
Okay.
So
So I'm going to
you
go
have
through the
about
rest of it.
15 minutes. Yeah, you
Yep.
have about 15 minutes. If and like I said, people, if you have questions, go ahead and keep them coming, and we can answer them as we continue.
Okay, so the goal is the reduction of symptoms. What are those symptoms that they're trying to, anxiety, depression, um, trauma, uh, sleep problems, behavior problems at school? What are the symptoms? What are we looking to change? What are the behaviors? We want to increase their functioning. We want them to be able to be productive, to go to school, to be able to focus. What are those adaptive core beliefs? I am worthy. I am valuable. I am not at fault. I did not do this. Accepting the change in their families, sometimes accepting the change in themselves, being able to say that this awful thing happened in my life. It is not my fault. I did not do this. I am a great individual, and I am going to move forward. We use surveys, pre and post intervention scales, Likert scales. We look for changes in behavioral, cognition, emotion, and verbal responses. Kids come in and they got their head hung low. When you start to see them running out the door all excited, smiling, that's a change. That's a change that they're not telling you about, but you can see it. They dress differently. They look differently. They act differently. Sometimes the children need some trauma-focused therapy like EMDR, and we will provide that. A lot of the adolescents, I'll refer to Joanne, and they'll go 2 or 3 sessions and have some EMDR and really get rid of those trauma symptoms. The surveys are great. We made up these surveys for children, and it was amazing the responses that they put on them. I really liked, and they'll let you have it. They were really amazing surveys that we created for children. Some of them were like frowny faces and smiley faces for the really, really young ones. You put a place there for them to write in their own opinion, and they will tell you exactly how they feel. And it is sometimes those responses that help us to become a better program. If somebody really doesn't like something, we want to know about it, because we are here to give them the best that we are. And if I'm doing something that they don't like, I really want to know. I'm never going to be insulted by it. I'm going to look at it as an opportunity to do something better. I guess that's it. Okay, we're up to questions now. Let them rip.
All right. So if you have any last minute burning questions, you can either chat them in to me or to the group, or if you raise your hand, I can see that you've raised your hand and can unmute you at this time. Joanne, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much for all of your ideas. And I do find that folks who often say that they're not creative are the most creative. I think another really neat thing about the use of not just of age appropriate, but kind of culturally appropriate tools is that sometimes those folks end up realizing that they are very creative and that it helps them ground. And so I think I might have shared this idea or this with you already, but not with the group. That one of the things that I ended up doing is similarly we had a survey for women who were limited English speaking and weren't attending the support groups that were being offered at our center. And so I created a survey in Spanish as an intern and kind of like distributed it and just kind of met one-on-one with them because some of them, it was easier with their literacy levels for me to just interview them. And, what I overwhelmingly got back is that they wanted to do something very hands-on. And so we tried art and they got really into it. And you're right, like the thing about the painting, that everybody loves painting, whether or not you're a Van Gogh doesn't really matter. It's the process of art that's really important, and what you get out in doing it. So it was really beautiful. And then I learned how to create the they're made with corn husks, but we created corn husks dolls. And I can do a basic, little dolly, with the head and then the skirt. Or you can create one that's more um that has the pants. So I don't want to say like I was going to go like the gendered route, but it can be wearing pants, or it can be wearing like a sort of skirt. But this women really took it to another level. I mean, they had sort of flower crowns that they were able to create out of the corn husks. They created a baby and a baby sling for one of their they were trying to depict a mother with a baby, and she had the baby in a sling. One created an entire bride. It was just amazing what came out, and this was just by switching the materials that I was using. So what you were talking about, right, is just that like access to different things, and it was super cheap. This was just corn husks that I got at like the nearest Walmart, that's traditionally used for food for making tamales. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and all of the knowledge that you're gathering in these many years that you've been serving our survivors. We really appreciate you and sharing this space with you today.
Well, thank you. One of the things that was inspiring to Joanne and I, we went the last couple of days down to Orlando to the training there, and we learned really a lot of interesting things. And we talked about maybe getting some other counties together and having a training here and letting people see our space, and understand, here are some of the things that we've worked on, and get a real visual of the idea of the space and the some of the creative pictures and things that we've created with children, or that they've created for us. So, we were talking about that. If there's some interest out there to come down or come up to Putnam County, depending on where you're from, and get a bird's eye view, we would like to do that sometime in the future.
Wow. Yeah, that would be amazing. So we'll look, because there's always the possibility of scheduling one of the rural trainings or something like that in your county.
Super, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining us for today's webinar. And today is and we it's funny, it's our rural project partners call. And in the sense, we have our partners in our own communities, but then we are also partners in an extended Floridian community. So thank you so much for partnering with us today, and we hope that you take lots of ideas away from our presentation. And we will see or talk to each other soon. And
All right,
here's
thank you.
yeah, Pam's and Joanne's information is on the screen, and you can always reach out to me, and we will follow up with a few materials that Pam mentioned.